So I'm actually going to start with you, Mike, so that we can get the conversation going. So I know that you have a pulse on the fans. So tell me, where are the fans at right now in terms of how they're thinking, feeling? What are they saying?
The fans are really upset right now. The expectation for the Detroit Lions was to be better than 1-4, at least 2-3 coming into this season. Second year with Dan Campbell. You have an offense that was performing really well up to this game. And you had Aidan Hutchinson. You picked up some players in free agency and the NFL draft, and the assumption is they'll take that step forward. And unfortunately, it does not look like that has taken the case. It looks like we've taken a step back, and after Hard Knocks and a lot of love from media in the offseason, really gave some hope to the fan base that we're going in the right direction. And clearly, when you get destroyed 29-0 against your former head coach, whose offense there was not really good, only scoring 14 points a game, and demolish us, it really destroys the hopes for the Detroit Lions. And if you look at Tankathon right now, Lions are currently sitting at the third overall pick in the draft. That is just one spot difference from last year. So right now the fans are really upset, and I believe they have a right to be.
Did you say tankathon?
Tankathon is where you get your information for the draft. Yes.
Okay. Didn't realize that. So what's the spectrum in the comments? What do we have? What is the most like conservative comment that fans are going with? Like, are there any with rose-colored glasses? And then what's the most extreme that you're seeing?
Oh yeah, the rose-colored glasses ones are, saying it's just a process. It's year 2 of the rebuild. This is what you expect. Even though you see other teams that are in their rebuild, like the New York Giants, who are 4-1, the Jets, who took a step forward at 3-2, Jacksonville Jaguars are looking pretty good, and then you got the other fans that are saying it's the same old Lions. Burn down the house right now. Sell the team. Fords, get rid of it. Go ahead and fire Brad Holmes, fire Dan Campbell, and completely tear this thing down to the roots.
Okay, so Herman, now we've set that table for you there. So you've talked before about how you watch games differently than your average fan because you've played. So I want you to, with all that in mind, as far as where the fans are in their mindset, what do you see? What's your reflection when you watch yesterday's game? What's going through your mind in terms of what's happening out there on the field?
Well, I'll start with really just the coaching side of it. We've had so much to say that was positive about the offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, the head coach, and how well the assistant coaches from there have done with the team. And when you really look at it and they start to pan the sidelines, many of us probably aren't paying as much attention to the body language, to the reactions to things that are happening. There seems to be a fire that's been really put out. I don't think there's confidence that's been lost. There isn't the resilience that I thought that we would see that would come across. I mean, this is a young team that is going to be looking at an experienced and also qualified coaching staff to really reel them in as players and to give them that hope of confidence or that way out of the spin that they're in. I don't know if the players are receiving that or if they're not prepared for it or incapable of doing it, because we've seen this team just really start to go in the opposite direction that we would have expected, given how strong they started out. So there's where I got a lot of concern, just like with MicroMike. It's like, there's something that needs to happen here. There's a lot that was expected and being under delivered, and I just don't see how they climb out of this one in the current mental state that I'm seeing, and just the feeling that I'm getting and the vibe I'm getting from this team.
Absolutely. I'm a human behavior person. And so whenever I'm looking at things, I tend to look at it from the psychological standpoint. And when I'm looking at, we talked about this yesterday, when we're looking at 4th and 1 on the opening drive and we're going for it. Like, what does that say to your team about the confidence you have in their special teams, the confidence you have in their defense? And then on top of that, they're playing against a quarterback, a rookie making his first start. And instead of pinning that quarterback deep in their own territory, chooses to go for it, take that chance, take that risk, and now he's got a short field. So it's like, what does that say to your team and to the players? I know you can't speak for them, but having that perspective, what do you think that message is that gets sent in that sort of a situation when this keeps happening over and over again?
I think what you get out of that, unfortunately, is there's probably going to be some lack of confidence that is perceived by the defensive side of the ball, especially your players. The DC, I'm sure is going to feel some type of way about that, especially on 4th and 9. And then you're sending to your offense almost desperation that, if you don't get it done, we're not going to be able to score any points because we can't score field goals unless, we're not even sure about our extra points. So that's sending a real great message to an offense that's number one coming into the game that would have to have such a burden on their shoulder. It's more than just getting in scoring position, the red zone, but it's also being able to say, hey, we can't win games on field goals. So I think it sends some subliminal messages to a team that right now is struggling to find and regain that confidence and that fire. And it's like they're almost waiting for either someone else to do it or for the opponent to just kind of lay it in their lap. I don't see a team that's ready to take that step forward and just take games where they're supposed to win or not.
Herman, I know last week when everybody was talking about Aaron Glenn, you were saying, nobody's going to walk into Aaron Glenn's office and tell him what to do and tell him how to coach and all of that. But in terms of looking at, it's like kind of a game management thing going on right now. Is there any checks and balances that happen on a team, within a coaching staff, anything that as you're having these issues with the game management or with play calling, is there any sort of internal, back and forth that can happen there? Or is it kind of just we're at the mercy of doing the same thing and seeing what happens? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, the coaches are very much like pretty much like the players, right? So they're a team. They're no different than us. So they're going to huddle up. You're going to have, even if Aaron is talking to Ben Johnson, the OC, they may have dialogue. They may have conversations with one another. Coach Dan Campbell, he's going to talk to his team. He also is going to bring everyone in like any other organization would do and go, hey, what do we need to do to fix this? Not only within our unit, but within our team. So I think those things are being addressed. The only thing is your decisions have to be definitive. If you're going to remove responsibility, you remove it. So this is a tough one because I don't see where if you don't make a move, what are the consequences? If you make a move, what are the consequences? This is a precarious situation for this team right now.
Absolutely. And so, Mike, you and I were talking earlier today about Coach Campbell, and you mentioned a coach that you were thinking of in terms of being like Coach Campbell, or it reminded you of this coach. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So what I've noticed here in Detroit is we tend to hire coaches, well, at least recently, that are inexperienced, whether they be a first-time head coach or somewhat of a retread. And what I suggest is if the Detroit Lions ever decide to get on to another head coach, they'd find somebody that is considered a winner, that who has won and won on multiple levels. Now, this guy is from Michigan. He is the Michigan head coach. That's Jim Harbaugh. I'm not saying hire him, but an individual such as him that has won before in an NFL level and in a college. Go out, if they're going to at some point get a new head coach, find somebody that has done it and is able to coach players, is able to get the best out of these players. Just going from a guy who is a tight end sometimes can result in a mistake. And if you look at Brad Holmes, he actually didn't hire Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell was hired by the Ford family before Brad Holmes was even hired. So if they end up moving away from him, whether it be this year or next year at some point, let Brad Holmes do decision and find somebody that's done it before.
I personally want to see up and comers. That's how I look at it. I want to see, new coaches that have proven themselves going up the ranks. I'm tired of seeing recycled coaches. That's just me. I want to see new faces and get those, just new pedigree. Herman, what's your perspective on this?
I think there's a hybrid. You need experience, but you do need someone who understands the level. A lot of people think it's just okay. You just need to bring in a coach. There's not a coach. There's politics. There's a lot that goes on in professional sports that you have to understand the lay of the land. You have to understand the new rules in the field that you're playing on. And in the NFL, some of the things you may think of, even at the collegiate level, is different. You can come from a place where you've never really experienced what it means to lead from the top, from whether it's a GM position or if it's at a head coach position, and some of the dialogue and politics that are played probably within that. Any team that says that there is an influence that can make up some of those decisions, I would question that. I think there's commitments that are made by the coach to the owners to the coaches, and then from there, the decisions that are made will ultimately affect the team as a whole. So I think you got to know that game, And sometimes it's not money that's going to motivate your players. Sometimes it's not going to be the fact that you're that type of a coach, or you're bringing a winning record with you and all that. Sometimes it could just it's just a crapshoot in terms of the players you get. But if you bring in a coach here, how does he fix this? Short of free agency, short of talent, keeping guys healthy. I mean, you're only going to solve part of the problem. There's still one that's going to exist beyond that.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I was asking you too about checks and balances within a coaching staff, because honestly, we'd be looking at another restart. We can't keep doing the restart because it's just creating this lack of depth. We can't keep doing this restart. It's just not, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to work. But what do you think, Herman?
Well, we talked about this the other day. I think this team is 2 to 3 years off with A, B plus at the worst draft picks, as well as going out and getting free agents. This is not going to be a slow build. So either you got to trust that this regime is going to be able to take that build and see it all the way through and make those type of decisions along the way and develop the talent. Or if you bring in someone else, are they there just as a quick fix, and then you're going to have to hire someone after them? I mean, this becomes a vicious cycle for an organization that since the 90s, and with the exception of maybe a couple of coaches in Schwartz and probably I would say in Caldwell, it's just been a disastrous pick after one after the other after the other after the other. And what is your confidence that all of a sudden it'll get fixed because you bring in a coach? I'll go pick the greatest coach on the planet. It's going to come down to more than just that. So with that, I yield my time.
Perfect.